Welcome to the Passionate Pioneer podcast. Hi, I'm Beth, and I'm passionate about supporting women who are feeling disillusioned and disappointed with their career and showing them what is possible when you follow your passion. Having your voice heard, finding your tribe of like minds, and being able to get support is so important when you don't know where to turn or who to talk to. I transformed my life from the corporate world to the coaching world, and I now empower women to follow my example and claim the freedom of choice to follow their heart, soul, and passion. So let's get started. Today I am joined by Jill Nicholson. Jill's story begins like most, leaving school with no idea of what she wanted to do. At university, she did a teaching degree, which gave her a solid foundation of management skills. But it wasn't until she was in her 30s that she had a calling to be a psychotherapist and counsellor. Supporting drug users and their families, Jill realised that her own drug of choice was food. And this fueled her passion of working with clients who had emotional eating disorders. However, working for a charity with government contracts, putting in 16-hour days and being a slave to the system eventually led to serious health problems that she couldn't ignore. Those health problems were the clincher that she needed to finally quit, take time out to take care of herself, and start developing her own business working with women around emotional eating. She is now following her passion and thriving. Welcome, Jill.
Hello, well, thank you so much. It's such an honour to be on here. And as a listener of the podcast, I've so enjoyed them, and they're inspiring and strengthening, actually, hearing other people's stories. So I feel very, very honoured to be invited, so thank you.
That's great. The honour is all mine. I've just been overwhelmed with how many women want to be on the podcast and tell their story, and there's so many overlapping stories, very similar. There's some very similar stories. So let's step back, Jill. Step back. Where would you tell me where you want to start? Let's step back in time to where it all began.
Okay, so at the age of 30, I retrained as a psychotherapist, which was really quite funny because I had been quite a stoic person, a get on with it person, which had lots of benefits. And actually, when I started training, I didn't tell everybody. I kind of almost whispered it, I'm training as a psychotherapist counsellor, as if I was like, I don't know, training as a pole dancer, not that there's anything wrong with that. Because it was so alien to kind of my sense of who I was. But for the first time ever, I listened to that feeling that I hadn't always trusted. I didn't always even know what it was. And I just felt pulled towards it. And then it all just sort of fitted into place. And as I was training in it, it was a bit like, do you know, if you've ever gone shopping and you try something on and it just fits perfectly and as if it's always been yours, and You're like, oh, this is amazing. And so I absolutely loved it. And I was very fortunate that actually before I completed my postgraduate qualification, I actually got a job, in Edinburgh with the postnatal depression service. And so I qualified already with a job and was there for 10 years and absolutely loved it working with mums.
Right. Yeah, isn't that funny listening to your intuition, right? It's very difficult for many of us to really, we dismiss it so easily, don't we? We just, what's that nagging feeling I've got? What's those nudges? Where are those words coming from that I should follow this? Oh, that's nonsense. And we dismiss it so easily and for so long, don't we?
We can, and I think we start to reason it. I'm quite a problem solver and I'm a bit risk averse, to be honest. And so it's so easy to explain away that feeling or think, what is it? Is it indigestion? What is this strange feeling? And now, do you know, the best things in my life have come when I've listened to that feeling. One is my husband, Paul, that feeling of just knowing and jumping, being brave.
Yeah, it's what I call the knowing without actually knowing. You can't explain it, right? You just know that it's the right thing to do, but it just makes no logical sense.
Yes.
Sometimes some of the women I've spoken to, it just makes no logical sense that, to follow their passion and to follow something that excites them, that lights them up. It's something inside, but it's a risk, isn't it? It's a risk to follow that. It feels kind of unsafe and unsure, unfamiliar. And many of us are reticent to follow it because it's just a big risk.
I agree. And I think it's, for me anyway, it's only as the years have gone on, I'm in my mid-50s now, that I know that feeling. And I know if I don't follow it now, it's not an option not to follow it, because it's brought me the best things in life. And you almost know when you're out of kilter, you're out of your groove, and it's time to course correct. But you're like, oh, I don't want to. I don't think.
I don't want to. Like, should I do it? Shall I go? Shall I do it? I'm not sure. Shall I do it? Yeah, it's a very nerve-wracking time, isn't it? I mean, I've had those moments, what I call little spiritual turning points. One in my 20s, and then again in my 40s, twice in my 40s. Right, one was to move from one country to another country, and then the next one was to move again and to open my business and to become a passion coach. So it's the passionate pioneer, right? That's why this podcast is the passionate pioneer. So, but it's there's those little nudges, and it's very scary, especially as you start getting older. You've definitely got a good point when as you get older, you learn to listen more.
Yes.
You're more in tune with yourself, but still. Yes. As you get older, it's still it's a bigger risk. When you're young, it's easier to take risks. But when you're young, you tend not to listen to your intuition. But you'll take the risks, but they might be the wrong ones, right? So it's kind of a balance, isn't it? As you get older, you're more in tune with yourself and learn to listen to your intuition. But then you also, it's more of a scary risk when you're older, right?
I think it is. And I think also, the next part that comes may well be bloody uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that you need to do it with your knees knocking. Sometimes
correct.
That feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to stretch, in starting this new biz training as a coach to add to the years of therapy. And then learning how, I don't know how to market myself. I don't know about IT. I don't know how to sell myself. And you're like, oh my God, why have I done this? And the great thing is, because I had to, because I want to, because I couldn't not do it, But I think it's that thing of, okay, hold on, because this is going to be uncomfortable and you're really going to have to learn.
Oh,
but that's part. Then you'll get to the good part.
Yeah. Oh yes, I've gone through all of those learning curves as a solo entrepreneur. I have to learn how to market myself. I've had to learn how to build a website, social media, the coaching. I've had to learn how to self-regulate, all the tools and techniques you need to get you through the days where you're like, I don't think I can do this, right?
It's because I think I had admin, I had an IT department. It's a bit like ClickFunnels.
Yeah.
What's ClickFunnels?
What's that?
I have to be honest, I've many times with the IT sat and thought, okay, I'm just going to cry for 10 seconds. And I'm not a crier. I'm just going to cry for 10 seconds because I'm so overwhelmed and I feel like such a numpty. And then I'll find a plan, or I'll find someone who knows how to do this, and thinking, okay, this is a journey. This is a journey, and that's okay.
Absolutely. So let's go into what you were doing then. So you retrained as a psychotherapist and a counsellor, and then you went into this charity work. So tell us the story and what happened there, because you had an illness anyway, didn't you, Jill?
Yes, so I manage lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, and at the last part of my work before I stopped and had to kind of recover, and then started this, was actually running services for drug users and for their family and for their children. So I went from the postnatal depression service, which I loved, and my goodness, it consolidated my practice, because you're working so much around relationships and attachment, working with mums who think when, everyone says when you have a baby, it's all going to be joy, you're going to love this little person will come out and you're going to immediately love them. Where for many women, it's like they may have had a difficult birth, and this little person comes out and they're traumatized, and they're like, oh my God, how do I keep this little person safe for like their life or for my lifespan? And also people have maybe not had the easiest of relationships with their mother. It all impacts. So it just gave me such an amazing insight into relationships and into sort of growing little people. And I have to say, I absolutely loved it. And I was there for 10 years. And then I left and moved within that charity to running services for people who use substances, who use drugs, and for the children. And actually, it came with those pivot points. I just got divorced. I was healthier. And it was a new challenge. It was a completely new challenge for me, a whole new area. To work in the field of addiction isn't the easiest of jobs, but it was also new and a new team. And it was a brilliant time. It was a time where, when you just feel so in charge of your own fate and you can feel you're in the right groove.
Right.
Do you know that feeling? Just like that energy or that vibration, it's humming at the right frequency. I'm where I'm meant to be. I'm doing what I'm meant to be. And really absolutely love my time there. And within my 7.5 years there, I had 4 promotions and ended up running both services. But what I found was my last job of the running, it was really contracts with the government, tenders, and also tenders that were being delivered by our services and maybe 2 others, as part of a consortium for the one tender. And so that meant you're dealing with organisations with their own policy and procedures and their own culture. My organisation had its own policy, procedures, cultures, and then the government had all theirs and their reporting and so on. So in some ways, there's quite a dance that needs to be done around all those elements in that kind of job. But what I found was, for me, not for everybody, but for me, it got to the point where 90% of that was de-energizing. Lots of adult protection issues, child protection issues with a very high-risk group. Loved the clients. That's what kept me there so long, knowing that what we were providing was for clients who, without exception, had had the worst beginnings. Huge percentage had abuse. And so what kept me going with the stuff that was hard or dry was that we kept providing a service to people who had the worst start, and they had a chance to have a treatment and recovery where their life could change direction. And that's really why I kind of stayed beyond knowing, because I knew I was out of kilter and I knew I needed to course correct before I did.
So it was the right thing to do going in that direction, but inevitably, it led to burnout, health issues, because there's just so many hurdles to, when you're working with governments and you're working with different enterprises, and you have to, as you said, it's a dance between all of those different things to find the balance. At the end of the day, who suffers? Is it it's the middle people, isn't it? The people that are trying their best to hold it all together.
Absolutely. And also you're trying to hold a team to get the best out of them in kind of charities, it's quite a budget to do that. But the biggest thing, I miss the client work. I am a therapist through and through, and now a therapeutic coach through and through, and I really miss that.
Right. Yeah. It's Yeah, it's an interesting story. So we did touch a bit on the food. So you work,
Yeah.
how did you get into that? How did you get into, because you were working with obviously those families and the addictions and
Yeah,
bringing families together
sure.
and obviously breaking chains, because there are
Yes, absolutely.
generational changes that, we make, when we break a cycle, so that it doesn't happen to the
Yes,
next child and the next child and the next child. So you're actually breaking cycles, aren't you? Generational cycles. But then you also found something about the food.
yeah,
So tell us.
yes, no, absolutely. Well, in my youth, when I was 20 years old, I was 20 stone. And for me, food was an anesthetic. And so I was completely unaware. I was always happy on the outside, and I was so out of touch with my feelings. That's why it's so hilarious I trained as a psychotherapist. I functioned by not feeling anything. I went into work where you're encouraging people to feel. But when I started work in the service with addiction, the first role I had, I still saw a very small number of clients, and amazing, resourceful people. And I listened to them and I thought, my God, me too. But
Right.
my drug of choice was food. I was like, oh my God. Now I was down to a healthy weight. So sorry, just to explain, by my mid-20s, I'd lost 8.5 stone.
Right.
But that wasn't the end of the story, because I had dealt with food. Here's what you eat to be healthier, move about more. So it could do all that part. But my weight loss did not sustain, because I hadn't worked out that it wasn't really just about the food. So in
Right.
many ways, we think weight gain, food is the main problem, or weight gain's the main problem, or all the clothes in the wardrobe, none of which blinking well fit anymore, is the main problem. But actually, the primary problem is the reason why we eat. That's the initial problem.
Yeah, it is. It's
And
going back, isn't it? It's uncovering the layers, isn't it? And doing the
it's
inner
the
work.
Yes, it's getting to the root. And when it clicked for me, oh my goodness, it's actually what goes on in our heads is just, if not more important than what goes into our mouths. Because if you speak to anyone, I was in a yo-yo dieter for 25 years, lost 8.5 stone, put 4 on, took off, put on. And I worked out, excuse me, in my life, I had gained and lost 27 stone.
Wow.
And what a blinking waste of time and effort, really.
Well,
Because
you did learn something, Jill, right? You learned that it's, you saw the pattern, you identified that pattern, didn't you?
well, I realised,
And you
and it was
realised you've
only
got to go back to the root cause. What was the root cause of it all, right?
exactly. And it was about 10 or 12 years ago I really got it, and then have been a healthy, stable weight, since that. So I suppose my approach is quite unique, because we're very much sort of herded into diets. So the next fad diet will work, or the next one. And I don't know about you, I tried all the crazy ones as well, etc. And it gets to the point where, it's not that we have failed at diets, it's that diets have failed us, because they're simply not the right tool for us emotional eater. So my programs, be them with groups or individual, they are specifically written for emotional eaters by an ex-emotional eater. And I was a really good emotional eater. I was great at it.
The other thing is about food, Jill. I'm not sure if you've obviously know this, but the right, you said diets don't work for us, and it's true, because there's not one size fits all for anything. We're all individuals. We're all unique in our own way. And so what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another person.
Absolutely.
I love chocolate. Now, I have quite low blood pressure. And I was advised by the doctors to drink coffee and eat chocolate because it raises my blood pressure. And it's healthy for me, because otherwise it drops too low. But but you have to know these things about your body. There's some of the fruits that I'm just not very good with. They make me feel, they give me stomachache. Actually, grapes is one of them. just make me feel quite unwell. So, you know, it's one of, so you just have to go on that journey, don't you, of self-discovery and what works for you.
Yes, but you know, I think one of the difficulties is that it can be quite hard to get to that place that you're describing of an awareness of, oh, actually, that isn't having a good effect on me.
Right.
Because if you've been a yo-yo dieter, as I was for 25 years, and do you know, Beth, I worked out 25 years is 9,125 days. Oh. 9,125 days of secret eating,
right,
of wanting to merge into the background, of when you receive an invite to something really lovely and happy like a wedding, the first thought isn't, oh, wonderful, that's so exciting. The first thought is, what am I going to wear?
Right.
You know, and it's all that time kind of wasted because I hadn't got to the root, I hadn't got to the actual root of the problem. Yes. And that's why I love doing this. And even when I was working my previous job, I was cooking this idea in my head for years and years, because, you know, I saw so many people who were labeling themselves as failures because they hadn't managed to stay on like Kim Kardashian's latest fad diet, because they were obviously weak, terrible failures. And I'm like, no, it's not that. It's just, we need something that can be long-term, gets to the root of the problem, and where food stops becoming the enemy. But it's also not your friend. It's neither. It's so some of what I work with is about really that food is emotionally neutral.
Right. Nice.
And no food is good or bad. You know, I have foods I'll eat every day, and I have foods that are sometimes food, and I have foods that are occasional. So like a big pudding, like, I mean, a proper pudding, like, you know, fudge cake and chocolate sauce and ice cream, you know, that is maybe once a month, you know, or I wouldn't maintain a healthy weight. But I could have that anytime I want. But the power of I choose. So I'm choosing that I have that as an occasional food. And so I think it's we wipe the slate clean, and we start to redo the relationship with food. And in that, we work at a depth, but we also work at a surface level of the habits and changing those habits. So we're rewiring, we're looking at every day, but we're also clearing the reasons why people eat and finding new ways to cope with emotion. So it's a deep fix, and one that people can take away for a lifetime.
Well, I think society's got a lot to answer for, Jill, right? I mean, and the fashion industry for sure, and these actresses and, you know, singers that, you know, have lots of money and lots of personal trainers, and they've been photoshopped, and, you know, they're all on yo-yo diets, trust me. I mean, they're all up and down, right? But we've got this thing in society of we've got to be perfect. Oh, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, you know, I've got to have perfect skin, I've got to have my nails, I've got to have, you know, and we're on this in this society of, you know, perfectionism. Everybody's got to look perfect.
And just as you said, even many of those stars, their photos are photoshopped, so they don't actually look like that. I think it's almost like those images, it's almost if no women have cellulite. I mean, biologically, most women do have cellulite by a certain age. And that's unavoidable. But if you're seeing the latest, I don't know, Victoria's Secret angels photos, or you know, it's like
skinny women. You can see their hip bones. It's very unhealthy, I think. You know, it's very unhealthy. They're so skinny. And yet they're saying that's how you should, you know, society, oh, this is how you should look, you know, and it's out of most people's reach, and it should.
It is. And also, I think my family all did retail of high-end clothes, and had the opportunity to go to some fashion shows in London and so on. And so you kind of got a wee glimpse at what's happening behind. And it's like, well, if you're willing to snort a ton of cocaine, have smoke 60 Marlboro Lights a day, and your only nourishment is a glass of Bolly champagne, actually, you will be 5'11" and
Absolutely.
stone.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll be withering away, right? In no time. You know, it's completely doable. But that's not, but that's what they, I totally understand. That's what they advocate for, right? They advocate for that, stay skinny.
They do. And I think we have to redefine womanhood. And womanhood has lots of different shapes. When I was 14 years old, I wanted to be blonde, petite, and French. I have not achieved any of those. I'm 5'11" and I'm a brunette. Well, it's kind of from a bottle now, but I'm a brunette and I'm still not French. Right. And I look back at that 14-year-old who just wanted to be anyone but themselves.
Right.
And one of the things about emotional eating and working with it, we're dealing with emotions that you actually get a big life clean out. Although the presenting problem is weight and food, people come away renewed.
Yeah,
that they have repeated themselves. Part of that is we own our individual womanhood. So I've got long legs, cellulite, big boobs, and
I've got shorter legs. I'm longer in the body. I've always had big boobs. That's just I've had them since I was a teenager. All of a sudden they just sprouted from nowhere. I mean, but that's great that you sort of dive under the hood, don't you, to see what the reason why is, what the root cause is, and when did this start? I mean, this is obviously it starts in some traumatic moment. We know the Karen Carpenter story, don't we, of how she was bulimic. And that's because she didn't want to be the front of the band. She wanted to be at the back. And the first time she was, and she had the most amazing voice, and she was and she sang, and some stupid reporter said, oh, who's that chubby girl singing at the front or something? And she saw that, and that was it. That was the traumatic event that led to her downfall, really.
And that is a story of many clients who were maybe just a bit, not even chubby as children, but just maybe a bit bigger than a sibling, or something they said at school. And then they felt so bad about themselves, they started to eat to cope with how they were feeling. And if you think as adults, we have the opportunity, if you're really pissed, so I don't know if I can say.
No, you can swear, it's not for children.
If you're really pissed off, you might say, I'm taking my car keys and I'm going out for a drive. If someone loves running, they might go for a run. Maybe they'll go to the pub. Maybe they'll go to the cinema. Maybe they'll go to their friends. If you're 7 years old, you don't have those options. You don't have that power. So what is around you that could easily make you feel better? Food. If you then go back and think, what happened to you if you fell down, and say your mum or your granny came and saw, oh, you've scraped your knee, you would probably have your knee cleaned and hopefully kissed better, and a plaster put on, and the right noises made of, oh my goodness, that's a sore one, isn't it? Have a sweetie. Yeah?
Right.
And it's so simple how the wiring around food and comfort gets all mixed up, and then we live it for a lifetime, and we think a diet will cure that. And one of the things I love is taking the shame and guilt out of emotional eaters. That is how easily it happened. Or there were traumatic events within their life, and they coped the best way they could, and that might have been food at that time. But it's taking that full power of who they are now and the power of I choose. So really, people are renewing themselves. And one of the things I love is that it doesn't just change their eating or their confidence, the obvious things. Actually, you see people who are getting out of relationships that aren't serving them well. You see people who, as they put better boundaries in with their food, they're putting better boundaries in with their family. So the person who always says, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'll do that. When they really want to say, oh no, for goodness sake, I don't have a minute to myself. And they say yes, and they're annoyed at themselves, and they're annoyed at the person who asked them. And so, they may well think, I'm just going to have a cup of tea and those 2 muffins in the cupboard.
Yeah, just perpetuates the cycle, doesn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. So what I love is that people leave the program a different person, and it's not just the weight, and it's not just the relationship with food. And I just love that if that's my life purpose. I do it with Emoshi. I also work with people around trauma, where they're stuck in trauma or repeating the same patterns. So it could be emotional eating, but it could be never managing to sustain a relationship, or being a high achiever, having everything you aimed at and still feeling a void. It's all a void, whatever way you do it. Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I can see this. You're so passionate about it. That's why I love that. I can see you're just lit up, right, when you're talking about it. And that's one of the reasons why I have this podcast, because I just love hearing these stories of, this is where I was and this is where I am now and this is what I do. And and we're all mirror coaches, aren't we? We're mirror coaches. So you can only really step up and support women, men, families, whatever it is you do as a coach or a healer or a therapist. We do it from our own experience and from our and overcoming something in our experience. Not that just we've had the experience and we're still in it. We've actually overcome that. So we've got the tools and techniques and steps to help, to break that cycle, help them break the cycle.
I have to say to you, last week I had a really difficult day with IT thing I dislike the most, no natural aptitude. And I feel like a 5-year-old that can't tell the time. I'm just like, I don't understand. And you know what I did? I had a cup of coffee and I put on your podcast, because I was like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Because I'm like the marketing and the IT and I put it on, and it was Julie Elves.
Yes, Julie, yeah.
And you and I were talking about fear, and the usual fear, what it means, breaking it down and all, but she had a different one.
She did,
and I loved
she had a new one.
And it was feel everything and roar.
That's right.
And I was like, oh, I needed that. And I went back to my IT, and do you know what? It's on a Post-it note on my desk. I was like, nice. Here's my Post-it. Write it down, and it's up.
She's got a program and a group, a community, I think, of lionesses. So she calls it the Pride. Yes. That's why she says fear, and raw. Face everything and raw.
And sometimes you just need that bit of uplifting when you feel you're banging against, which happens, just to think, okay, I can go ahead and carry on with it now. Yes.
Amazing. That's great. Oh, what a great. I feel so humble and so proud at the same time that you listened to a podcast and it made such a difference. I mean, that's why I'm doing this.
It was a power surge.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. Okay, so let's just do a quick finish here. I've just got a few questions.
Sure.
So what relationships or people have influenced or inspired your passion, your sense of destiny? Who have you looked at in the past?
Okay. Do you know, in working with people one-to-one, I have to say I find them as impressive as Oprah. They're maybe not billionaires, but what they've overcome often is listening to people's stories, and you actually think, how are you still alive?
Yeah.
How have you, for example, yesterday when awful things happened, you did not go back to using heroin. How are you still hoping for a better future? How are you still holding the vision? And sometimes I've said to clients, you can't see it just now, but I am holding the vision of who you will be. So I have to say, often it has been then.
Yeah.
I have to shout out to my amazing husband when I said, I'm going to end up taking most of our savings while not earning and invest in myself to train as a coach and learn IT things. Is that okay? And he's like, yeah, I trust you. So, oh my God, amazing Paul. But I have to say, in recent times, my pivotal moment has been meeting Andrea Callanan.
Oh, yes.
So I did a line coaching academy. And to be honest, I was just watching her because I thought that's the kind of coach I want to be. because she was so experienced, but she still had such an accessibility, the way she talked to people.
Yeah.
And so I signed up so I could see her email sequencing, because I knew nothing about it, and think, oh, okay, and ended up doing a freebie and then having a call. I thought, oh, I'll learn how she does calls. I'll learn how she sells to people. and I came off a call going, yeah, actually, I wanted to work potentially with groups. I needed to be more of a coach as well as a therapist. And it was a pivotal moment, because I'd lost confidence when I was ill and off. I'd kind of lost sight of who I was. And my husband, God bless him, kept saying, I can still see all you are and all you will be. Days when I couldn't walk, and so I did the coaching course. So I have to say she's one of the biggest ones, because she is somebody who's like at a stage of being at Necker Island with Richard Branson, but actually she'll listen to me and she'll say it in a Welsh accent, Jill Nicholson, that I won't even try and say, Jill Nicholson, that was lush, and I found my voice again. I found myself, and so I have to, yeah. Her courses are amazing.
That's how we know each other, Jill, because we're part of Andrea's community. Because Andrea was my coach for a year and a half.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so
wow.
and so I totally understand how important it is. When I met Andrea, I was just at a major changing point, pivotal point as well. I really needed somebody to be a guide, and she was that guide for me too. But yeah, it's so important, isn't it, to have, to have that support when we think that the thing is, society has told us it's weak to ask for help. That it's needy, we shouldn't do it, we can stand alone, especially being British. Oh my God, we're just like, we don't like to talk, just get on with it. We don't like to talk about anything, right? I mean, America's got the other way, right? They started with this Jerry Springer show in the 80s where they just talked about everything, but it was, that's horrifying for British people, because we really don't like it. And society has taught us, you're, as a girl, I was like, well, you're a girl, just, be quiet and, only speak when spoken to. And, you're not allowed to have an opinion, or, your opinion's not really important, or, these kind of society cycles that, that we really need to break. But yes, that's definitely how I know you, through Andrea.
Do you know what I think, though, I think going into business, I think you have to be really honest and say, where's my gaps in knowledge and skills, and try not to be terrified if you're anything like me, like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this and this and this. And then you find someone who knows how to do it, and they're already doing it really well.
Yeah.
And you learn from it. It's a bit like playing squash. If you ever played squash with someone much better than you, your game improves.
Yeah.
But also, I think when you're in the midst of this, you can feel like a little boat being tossed around in the water. Yeah. And sometimes it's like you need someone who's been that lighthouse, almost like, come on, you can do this. Here's what you need to do.
Yeah. And so you need a shining light, don't you? You need a guiding light. You need somebody that's walked in your shoes, that's been there and done it. And, there's no other way around it. And this is what we have to get into, this feeling that if we're going to make these major changes in our life, for you, it's, your clients is with trauma, emotional eating disorders, something that started, a long time ago. For me, it's women transitioning out of their 9-to-5. But, you've got to be able to talk about that. You can't just do it if you've not experienced it. It just doesn't work. And going it alone is really not the option, is it, Jill? I mean, you, like you said, you found Andrea. I found Andrea. I've also found many other women now. I've got a whole tribe of women. Yeah. I've got a community, on Messenger, on WhatsApp, on a membership group. It's, I've got that tribe of women. It's so important, isn't it, to find your tribe?
it's too lonely, and there'll be great days and bad days, and to know you can go to your community. And I still go to, people who were on courses I've been on, and drop them a text. Do you know how to blah, blah, blah?
Right.
And they do, or I'll barter skills, for it. And actually, I had the absolute honour and joy of, on one of Andrea's courses, being an expert coach doing trauma with people. So that was amazing, amazing moment. But I think when you're doing online businesses, in many ways we can set them up with such a small expense compared to if you're setting up a shop, you're fitting a shop, you've got stock. But don't make the mistake of thinking you don't need to invest, and the investment is in yourself.
Yeah.
And in mentors, and in your systems, and in your marketing, don't skip that. Don't skip that part, because you're not going to get to where you need to be.
Yeah, it's true.
If you don't have that community and the mentoring.
Yeah, and I like that you talked about, skill swapping, bartering skills, because I do that all the time. With my one-to-ones. I'm just starting a group program now, similar to you doing a group program, right? But and I've been doing one-to-ones, but I always, if I need to, I'll bring somebody in. I'll just call somebody and say, look, I've got this client. Can you help out? Do this, and then I'll jump into your group for you whenever you need me. And that's how it works. I mean, it's great to have such a phenomenal community.
It's amazing. It is, but one of the other things, I think, if you are in any way struggling a bit, or you're doing something new and you're not sure, when you're in a community and they know you, they reflect to you all you are. When you're like, I can't do this,
Right.
and oh my goodness, actually they will hold you in that time as well.
They'll lift you up. They'll support you and cheer you on, right? They'll be your cheerleaders, right? This is why I'm stepping into group programs now, because, Jill, it's the community, it's the support. I've experienced this, and I'm like, why did I wait so long to do groups? I don't know. But, it's the community support. It's the inspiration and the encouragement and empowerment you feel when you learn and grow together, like I have in a group, like you have in groups, like I continue to do and you continue to do. We both still continue in groups, right? Absolutely. It's absolutely the key, right?
It is, but also it's also good to know, because sometimes we can think, oh, everybody knows how to do this, everybody's doing brilliantly, and I haven't got this bit set up yet. And actually, when you're in a community, you see that everybody has their bits where they feel stuck, and then they have their growth spurts, and then and that's the rhythm of it. Yeah. And I find that really helpful. As well. Yeah,
it's really nice to just have the support of like minds as well. You all want to be, you're all looking to improve, and improve your life, improve the life of your clients, and that whatever, just improve your life, and and together you can learn and grow. And okay, so I've just got one last question for you, Jill. What advice would you have for your younger 25-year-old self?
Don't miss the red flags. Course correct faster. You are absolutely good enough, would be one of them. And do what you love.
I love it. Great advice. Words of wisdom there. Golden nuggets for our audience. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining today, Jill.
Oh, thank you. I've had such a lovely time, so thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening today. If you would like to join me in telling your story about how you are quietly quitting your career and how you've got one foot out of the 9-to-5 rat race, Or if you are a woman who has a story about already leaving the professional world to follow your passion and can offer inspiring advice, then please message me to get yourself booked in on an episode just for you. If you have a question for me or would like to know more information about how I can support you in one of my passion programs, please message me on Instagram, Facebook, or visit my website. You can also grab your free copy of my workbook, Your Passion Journey Starts Here, by joining my online community. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy this podcast and share it with your friends. Until next time, this is Beth Taylor at the Passionate Pioneer Podcast, signing off.